Welcome to part 2 for Acting for Video Games tutorial with Ace Ruel. In this video, we're going to cover the things that you need to know when it comes to delivering combat for the first time, such as how to deliver a single attack or a heavy attack, or when the character starts to stray from side to side. Now, there's so much content to cover when it comes to combat, but what I'm going to do is focus on the fundamentals and at the end talk about the additional things that you might need, but is easy to learn on the job. So now, let's get into it. Combat idle is the idle that we get into when we are about to engage into combat. Think about it. If you've ever had a fight before, you would not be fighting from your normal relaxed state. You normally put your fists up and you have your feet planted in a different position. This is the same for the gameplay character. When they're about to engage in combat, their physicality changes. And for video games, characters enter the combat idle through either pressing a single button, holding down a button, or doing an attack from the relaxed idle, but at the end of the attack, end up in the combat idle before returning to normal idle. But for shooting video games in mocap, you will always do the combat from the combat idle. Now, to enter the combat idle, I believe it should take no longer than 2 seconds and done in 2 foot placements. And just like what I mentioned in my previous Locomotion video about idle, you have to remember this combat idle like a snapshot picture, because a majority of the moves are going to be done from the combat idle and you will have to return back to the combat idle. And one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of this section is that most combat idles have a right-handed stance. So that means their left foot is placed in front of the right foot. This is because they base their characters being right-handed. So for this video, all the combat idles will be based off that format. Combat locomotion is when the character is moving around, as in walking forwards and walking backwards, but with the combat idle attached to the movement. This means that the movement is more purposeful, it has more reason, and this can also mean that when the character now moves from side to side, they start to strafe, meaning that their head is facing forward, but their body is moving to the left and right. The same rules that apply to the first video where I talked about locomotion applies here, but let's take a further look in how to strafe to the left and how to strafe to the right. When strafing, the easiest way to move to your left is to start with your right leg and place it behind your left leg and continue to walk sideways. As you are walking sideways and they are crossing with each other, your body is still facing forward, your head is forward, and your upper body is still in the combat idle. Now, the only difference when strafing to the right is to use your left leg to cross over in front of your right leg and to walk continuously in that direction. This type of strafing locomotion is always used when a character is locked onto an enemy. Outside of that, it's used when a character is using a weapon such as a bow and an arrow, or when the character has an item that requires them to aim first. Dodging is a form of locomotion that we use to evade an attack from an enemy. There are 2 types of dodges that most characters have. A short one, which is like a short stride, and a long one, which is like a longer stride, or normally a dodge roll. For this tutorial, we're just going to focus on the easiest option, which is the stride, which is short, and the longer stride. To perform the short dodge action, we start in the idle, the combat idle. Now, to dodge to the left, all you're going to do is think about taking a step to the left, but imagine trying to take the widest step to the left and at the quickest time. So you use your left leg and you step straight to the left as fast as possible with as much distance as possible. This is exactly what you do when stepping to the right. So you take your right foot and you'll place it as far as you can and as fast as you can to the right with the left leg following behind it. Well, technically in front of it. Now, when you're moving forward, you use your front foot, which would be your left foot. And when you're moving backwards, you use your back foot, what would be your right foot. I say this should be done in 2 foot placements, making it nice and swift and easy to complete. Now, to dodge where you cover more distance is very similar to strafing. Now imagine strafing to the left and only using 2 foot placements before returning to idle. Those 2 foot placements you want to do as quick as possible, as if you're taking a hop and trying to get as much space covered before returning back to idle. Now when going towards the right, imagine those first 2 foot placements you would do when strafing to the right, then returning to idle. And when moving forward, you want to hop forward, land on your back foot first, which would be your right, and end on your left foot. And when moving backwards, you want to hop, land on your left foot first, and end up on your back foot, which is your right. And with my upper body, I just do what feels natural to me or what's required by the production. Now, most games generally have at least 2 forms of attacks, one being a light attack and one being a heavy attack. Light attacks are quite quick and don't take as much enemy life like a heavy attack, but a heavy attack takes longer to deliver. Now, with a light attack, it should be done fairly simple, meaning that it shouldn't take so long to deliver. And again, I would always say no more than 2 to 3 foot placements before returning back to idle. For attacks that make you step forward with 1 foot, you may be asked to return to the idle by taking another foot, but some companies might ask you to step back into the idle. With heavy attacks, it's all about telegraphing the weight of the weapon and how much effort it takes you as the character to deliver the attack. And if it's not a weighted weapon you have for your heavy attack, then it's all about showing the energy and effort that you're about to put into this move that is going to cause more life damage to an enemy. When shooting combos, I believe the actor should know the combination of each move first put together, because what happens is each attack is shot separately by itself and then linked on to the other attack. The importance of this is because as a game player myself, I may not press the button 3 times to deliver the full combo. I might just press it once, or I might just press it twice. So therefore, each move has to be shot separately and then linked together. Let's focus on the first move. So once you've delivered that first attack, before you return to idle, what you need to do is hold the end pose of that attack. The reason why you hold that end pose, because that end pose of the attack before you return to idle is the beginning of the second attack. So for animation purposes, you may hold that end attack for at least 3 to 4 seconds. Now, in the actual game, you won't see the character actually hold that end pose if you press the button once, but it just allows animation to have more room to take away or add on to that end pose. When you shoot the second attack, you will start the second attack from the end pose of the first attack, and then you will end on the end pose of the second attack and hold it before returning to idle. This is the same for when it comes to the third attack. You will start at the end pose of the second attack, deliver the third attack, and then hold the end pose for 2 to 3 seconds for performance purposes, then return back to combat idle. There is one more requirement that you are very likely going to be asked to do when it comes to attacks and delivering combos, which I never mentioned before. Now, imagine delivering an attack that requires you to step or stomp forward. And usually when we do this type of attack, we use the step forward as a way to generate more force, but also we use it at the same time as we place the attack. But for animation, instead of placing the attack and the foot down at the same time, they may require you, or should I say will require you, to place your foot or stomp your foot first, then bring the attack. Now, as someone that does martial arts, it is kind of off-putting to do something like that, but it helps animation in regards to foot placement and displacement. When it comes to blocking, there is going to be a range of performances that you need to do. One, you would have to perform block idle. Block idle is quite simple. All you do is start from your combat or your normal idle, depending on what the production says, and then you enter the block idle. And you will hold it there for a good couple of seconds before returning back to the idle. Blocking also has its own locomotion, and the locomotion is you hold the block position with your upper body and then you use your legs to move around, of course, which is in the same style as the strafing combat mechanism. So we don't have to go over that again, because if you watch the previous takes where I spoke about moving in the combat locomotion, which has got strafing and moving with purpose, therefore we don't have to explain that again. But what we will focus on is hit reactions. There's usually three types of hit reactions. One, the first one is where you're in the block idle and you get hit by an enemy and it really barely even shifts you. It maybe just move your weapon or slightly move your upper body. The second hit reaction may open up your guard or displace you by 1 foot. This is because the enemy's attack might be stronger than it was previously for the first hit reaction. The final hit reaction may displace you about 2 to 3 steps to even falling on the ground, because the enemy's attack is much more powerful. Now, there's one thing to keep in mind, that when you get hit and it displaces you 2 to 3 steps or you fall to the ground, you recover and you stay where you are and return back to idle, which means you do not move forward back into your original position before returning to idle. Performing hit reactions is not much different from when you've done the block hit reactions. One of the main difference is you'll be doing it from the combat idle and returning to the combat idle. Now, additional features that you may be asked to do is to take hits from different parts of the body and reacting to it. So being hit in the head, the back, the shoulders, the legs, all from different angles, as well as the different levels. So light, medium, and heavy. Now, death for me is probably one of the easiest things to do, because all you have to do really is be an idle, take a generic hit reaction, so somewhere in the center of the body, and then fall down to the ground. The only difference is that you may be asked to do, 4 to 5 different ways. You may be given some direction. You may be asked to take a hit reaction in a specific body part and then die, but it's nothing that you'll find over challenging to do. Now, we've come to the end of the tutorial, and I believe I've covered the most important grounds when it comes to delivering combat for the first time in a video game. Now, when you work on different productions, they may do things slightly different from me and each other, like the way they dodge and the way they deliver attacks, because it may be specific for their character. But this video is a great guideline to get started, as well as understanding the direction given by the director on the day. Now, there are some things that I didn't cover in this video, because combat, there can be so much to it. But these things that I have not mentioned, I believe you can learn on the job. Stuff like unequipping and equipping a weapon, or how to aim and the locomotion used for aiming, things from unarmed combat. You can use this video as a guide, and I guarantee it will help you, as well as getting the direction from the director on the shoot. In the next video, we will be focusing on enemies. Now, most of the things you do for enemies you can learn from this video, but there are specific things that you would do for enemies for itself, and that's what we will cover. So until then, peace out, and thank you for watching.